Hi, and welcome back. I'm John Dawson. There's a certain kind of person who struggles in retirement more than others. It's not because they lack money, and it's not because they lack interests, but because they don't have a slower gear. I happen to know that person because I am that person. For as long as I can remember, I've had the ability to fixate on an outcome and push relentlessly towards it. If I decided I was going to accomplish something, I didn't casually attempt it. I reorganized my entire life around it. I learned this early. My parents repeated the same phrase over and over: if at first you don't succeed, try again. I was an Eagle Scout, minus the Eagle part, which is due to a small merit badge issue, which is another story. I played soccer for 25 years. Discipline was not optional in our house. My mom was a math teacher, even my math teacher in the 8th grade. I learned to solve problems. I worked the equation to stay with something until it was finished. And that wiring has never really left me. As an adult, that drive expressed itself through work, in tech especially. Slowing down never felt safe. The landscape changed constantly. New tools, new frameworks, new expectations. If you weren't moving forward, you were falling behind. I grew up in the South with a slow accent and a slower cadence, but in Los Angeles, San Francisco, London, Tokyo, I had to learn to think fast and speak fast. The environment rewarded speed, clarity, and output. The faster you moved, the more valuable you were perceived to be. And I thrived in that. I liked the pace. I liked solving complex problems. I liked delivering what felt impossible. There was a rhythm to it. Identify the problem, build the solution, ship the product, repeat. Each cycle produced a small surge of satisfaction. You didn't call it dopamine at the time. You just called it a good day. So, when I retired, something interesting happened. My body didn't relax. It stayed on. And even now, years later, there's still a hum under the surface. But in those early months, it was pretty loud. I found myself unconsciously trying to recreate structure. I started a publishing company. I wrote and published several books. I helped launch a church plant in my neighborhood county. I helped my daughter publish her first book. We mapped out aggressive travel plans. In 2026 alone, we're aiming to visit more than 25 countries. On paper, that doesn't look like slowing down. And in some ways, it wasn't. But what I began to realize is that I wasn't restless. I was just curious. And there's a difference. Restlessness feels anxious, but curiosity feels alive. It felt less like I was scrambling for something to do and more like a kid who suddenly realized the entire candy store was open and unsupervised. Can you imagine? That is exhilarating. And still, there's a deeper layer to this. I use the phrase worker bee. I use it to describe a certain mindset. A worker bee is someone who they've worked so hard and so fast for so long that they don't even know how to disengage. They don't have a slower gear because no one ever rewarded them for having one. They were praised for output, for resilience, for staying late, for pushing through, and for not quitting. If you're wired this way, motion feels virtuous. Our culture reinforces it constantly. I'm busy. It's practically a badge of honor. My wife gave me a shirt that says, "Keep moving." It's my favorite shirt. Remember the line from the Dead Poets Society? I want to do more. I want to be more. I'm like, yes. Or in tech, the slogan was, move fast and break things. You see, the message is consistent. Speed equals vitality. And to be fair, there is truth in that. Life is short. You want to experience it fully. You want to extract as much meaning and as adventure as possible. But high achievers sometimes confuse motion with meaning. When you've been rewarded your entire life for output, stopping can feel like failure. It can feel like quitting. And if you were raised to never be a quitter, that creates tension. You see, the very traits that allow you to succeed, like resolve and determination and relentless focus, they become the traits that make slowing down difficult. Then there's also the identity layer. For decades, my professional output fused with my sense of self. The projects I poured myself into felt deeply personal. When you're producing at a high level, people evaluate your competency, your reliability, even your character through what you deliver. And when that stops, it can feel jarring. Not because you miss the paycheck, but because you miss the affirmation. I remember my dad telling me growing up that everyone is replaceable in a job context. And I understood the words, but I didn't feel their weight until my role was eliminated. Years of effort, contribution, long nights, intense seasons, and then almost overnight, the machine adjusted. The projects moved forward without me. The organization continued. How is that even possible? That realization was humbling. And if you are wired like I am, it can briefly feel like irrelevance. There were moments when I felt that. Moments when I wondered whether my sharpness would dull if I wasn't constantly solving professional problems. I worried about brain atrophy. I worried about losing my edge. I worried about becoming slow in the ways I had always resisted. But over time, something shifted. And part of that shift came from what I've talked about in another episode. My first attempt at retirement lasted only 3 months. And then I went back to work for 3 more years. You see, I needed that season to confront something honestly. If I didn't need the money, I needed to feel needed. I needed the friction of problems. I needed the social ecosystem of work to feed a part of my ego I hadn't examined closely. Well, when that chapter finally closed, I had to retrain my nervous system. I began paying attention to what stress actually felt like in my body. You know, that tightness in the chest, the shortened sleep, that background hum of urgency. And then I began noticing what calm felt like too. Deeper sleep, slower mornings, conversations without glancing at a clock, physiological changes in diet and exercise and mood. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It was more like starting a new diet. You know, the first few weeks, they're uncomfortable. It's weird. You know, you crave the old rhythm. You miss the old intensity. But gradually, your body learns. It adapts. It learns a new pace. It stops experiencing or expecting adrenaline as a baseline. Slowing down, I've learned, does not mean becoming slow. It means choosing where your intensity belongs. In my working years, intensity was almost entirely allocated to professional output. Now, intensity shows up in different places. In my marriage, in being present with my kids, in friendships, in travel, and curiosity, and learning. The arena changed, but the drive didn't disappear. And that's an important distinction. If you're listening to this now and you're a driven, let's say 42-year-old professional watching this, you don't need to extinguish your ambition. You just need to understand it. You need to recognize that the qualities that made you successful can also imprison you if left unchecked. And even if you can't retire early, you can begin reallocating intensity. You can invest in relationships with the same focus you invested in projects. You can protect time with the same seriousness you protect deadlines. Because one day, the projects may vanish, the clients may move on, and the title may change. And then the only thing left standing will be who you are apart from output. The healthier form of ambition after financial independence, I'm discovering, is not the pursuit of more production. It's the pursuit of a fuller life. A life where your identity is not measured by what you deliver, but by the person you become. There are people in your life who love you not for your accomplishments, but for your presence. They don't want your accolades. They want your time. And for someone wired like me, that realization doesn't come easy. It takes intention. It takes courage to step out of the arena and still believe you matter. But here's what I can say now, having walked through it. Slowing down is not weakness. It's a reallocation of strength. And if you are built like I am, you don't need to suppress your drive. You need to decide where it belongs. If this resonates with you, I would love it if you would like and subscribe and maybe share your comments below. I'm especially interested in hearing from those who feel that hum of intensity even in retirement. And as always, thank you for tuning in to John Dawson Retirement.